My laptop is really slow,
Oh, okay.
but I put that from Makapala, South Dakota. It's really slow,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that.
but I put that from Makapala, South Dakota.
Okay.
It's really slow,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that.
but I put that from Makapala, South Dakota.
Okay. All right. I think we're getting here. I finally figured out the YouTube thing and the, okay. All right. So we have about 25 people. So yes, Maryland, Eau Claire. Someone, Rolando says they're from traditional Anishinaabe territory in London, Ontario.
Mm.
I guess we're from Potawatomi land here, huh? And Wilmette and Evanston.
Yeah, I think there's Potawatomi and Mishkwaki.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, Brooklyn, Allison, Florida. Okay. Oh, someone said they're from Canarsie land.
What's that? Where's that?
I don't know. Minnesota. Okay. All right. Well, I guess people will, Stone Mountain, Georgia. I guess people will just kind of keep joining in and we'll just go ahead and get started, I guess.
Sure.
Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Hussein Omar. I'm the host. Our guest here is Kevin Locke. I'm guessing most people know who he is, but just in case, he's an internationally known educator, hoop dancer, flute player, storyteller, Baha'i, from the Standing Rock Lakota Nation, which is home of the Hunkpapa, I think, right?
Right. Yeah, you said that right.
Oh yeah. Okay. Nice.
All right. Have a good evening.
Okay. So yeah. So I had basically just like kind of like one big question for you, Kevin, with like a couple different parts to it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So what got me thinking is, this quote from Abdul Baha, where he says, speaking of the native peoples in the Americas, they said there can be no doubt that they will become so illumined as to enlighten the whole world. So that's, something and I think about a lot. And then I wanted to think about it, like ask you in relation to two different things. One is language revitalization efforts. And then the other is the Standing Rock camps, like the No Dapple camps.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking like if you could talk a little bit about the language revitalization, because I know you're involved in that. And I think maybe lots of different languages, but particularly Lakota. And what from what I understand about Lakota belief and Lakota culture, language, is that the belief in the oneness of humanity is kind of a central belief, just like with the Baha'i faith. And from my understanding is the Lakota language is kind of the way it's structured, it makes you kind of think about the interrelatedness of everything. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
recently it's kind of being pulled back from the brink of kind of purposeful extinction. And you're one of the folks that's been kind of leading that movement. So I was just wondering if you could talk about that. And it just seems like the language is a key part of enlightening the world.
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring this up. Now you mentioned several things in there about the No Dapple movement and then the Lakota language, but I do think they are really quite interconnected because this whole all these different revitalization or revival movements, they do represent an awakening process. And so I think this is really happening all over the world. This gradual and I think accelerating process of people creating a consciousness of becoming, I would say, maybe aligning themselves with the forces of integration. And so this, I think one of the things about the No Dapple movement is that it was really initiated by young people, particularly in Wakapala district where I live. And I think it has had a lot to do with the uh, this dawning consciousness of the relationship that the people have with God. And this is really an important point because, in the Baha'i writings, Baha'u'llah says, and it's not an exact quote, but it's quite close. It says, to the cities of every nation, he has sent his messengers, whom he hath commissioned to announce the glad tidings of the paradise of his good pleasure, to draw them nigh unto the haven of abiding security, the seat of eternal holiness and transcendent glory. So, to me, this is a statement that pertains to all the diverse kindreds in the world. That really all of them have been the recipients or the beneficiaries of uh, this timeless and changeless, this eternal process of this creating this covenant between heaven and earth. And a lot of people say, well, cities, uh, without realizing that prior to 1492, some of the largest cities were here in North America, many of them larger than any cities in Europe at the time, such as Cahokia, just south of Chicago, and many others as well. But in any case, the main point of this, what I'm thinking about, where I'm going with this quote, is that um, uh, here in North America, there have been many of these messengers, these holy souls, who have established a covenant with all the different diverse kindreds. And so, particularly, I'm thinking here of the covenant which the Lakota people received, and this was from this holy soul, divine being, and we call her Tehincha Laskawi. Tehincha Laskawi. I guess in English you would say the white buffalo calf woman, who was this holy soul that appeared some time ago. Uh, now the genealogy is intact and known, but there's no real exact date that's attached to that I'm aware of. Uh, in any case, this holy soul appeared and established a covenant with the people, and so the covenant uh, is really essential to the identity of the people. In fact, at the No Dapple camp, a lot of people were talking about decolonize. They say decolonize. And then finally, somebody said, "Well, how do you say that in Lakota language, decolonize?" So that's pretty easy to say. The word that you say for decolonize, you say Gilakota, Gilakota. It means to go back to being a Lakota. So then that begs the question: well, what is a Lakota? Where did that word come from? Well, that's also very easy to connect to describe. This was the name or the word when this holy soul, this Ptahintla Skawi, appeared. Prior to that time, the people did not refer to themselves as Lakota. She named them that at the time after she imparted the covenant, and she gave them that name, Lakota. Prior to that time, the way I understand it, they referred to themselves as Pte Oyate, Naish Ikche Oyate. In other words, like the Buffalo people were the people who I would say like the natural people, original people or natural people. And so then this Ptahintja Laskawi, when she appeared, she indicated that she had been authorized to appear by what she referred to as Tunkashila. Now, Tunkashila means grandfather, but it's also the supreme honorific title. So to call somebody grandfather is really it's really the superlative honorific title. And so this being Tunkashila that authorized her to appear was the one that authorized to bring this covenant to mankind to establish, the social laws, which of course are changeable. Those are attuned to the exigencies or contingencies of the people at the time, and so they vary from place to place, time to time. But then she also brought the spiritual laws. Those are immutable. Those are changeless. Those are uniform throughout the world. All peoples have these analogous spiritual laws. And then, of course, the prophecies. So basically, you look at any covenant throughout the world, they all consist of these three elements that I just mentioned. So this is what this maiden brought as well. She brought this, established this covenant, the divine laws amongst the people. And so now, it seems like I diverged or digressed somehow from your question, but the Lakota language is the perfect instrument to express that covenant, because within this covenant, I think the essential feature of it is this statement I'll make here, which is not it's not unique to Lakota. I think it's universal. I mean, this is exactly what Jesus did as well, and that is the principle of everything in the world. Everything in the world, like we're talking about the contingent world, the world that we experience with our senses, everything in the world is a physical manifestation of a spiritual reality. So it's that the physical world and the spiritual world, they're not separate. It's all the handiwork of one creator, one fashioner. So then this one maker, one fashioner, one creator applied the same laws throughout the creation, both the seen and the unseen. So this principle is very logical in that the people realize that everything in this world, this physical world, has a counterpart in the spiritual worlds. And I think this was a point which was highly misunderstood by the immigrant population, especially from Europe. And so they just came and they thought, well, these people are savages. These people are worshiping that mountain. These people are worshiping that eagle or the ocean, but it's not that at all. It has nothing to do with that. It's just that using that principle, it's just that that mountain, the physical mountain, is the physical manifestation of the spiritual principles, maybe something like majesty or grandeur. Or maybe that eagle is emblematic of spiritual principles like maybe ascendancy, or nobility, or maybe like the ascendant nature of the human spirit, and so on and so forth. So we just use that. So then this language that this woman infused with spirit, of course, the people had language prior to that, but it became the vehicle through which this relationship could be perfectly expressed. So that's a great feature of the Lakota language, is that I always think when you hear it, if you understand it, everything, especially like the workings of the creation that just pops out, boom, it just comes out in 3D form. It's very easy, and it's very succinct in that regard. Of course, now there's no such thing as an inferior or superior language, but it's just that it's just that the language is a tool for the expression of the human spirit. So anyway, going back to this DAPL movement, so this is something that I think young people are awakening to, is this relationship. They're awakening to the this the uniqueness and the strength of the language, Lakota language. And one of the interesting things about this decolonization, of course, if you say decolonization in English, what does it really mean? It means you're stripping something away, but then what do you replace it with? That's what we don't know. But when you say Lakota, what that means is you go back to be a Lakota. You go back. In other words, so Lakota, what this word really means, if you analyze it, it means people who have received a covenant from God, and people who hang on to that, people who cling to that, people who have faith. See? So that means if you say Lakota, means you have to go back to that. You have to go back to the basics of prayer, go back to all these fundamentals, all the basic universal human values that we all have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Did I digress from your question? Or what?
So like I was wondering why. I guess I have two questions based on that. Is I think one of the things that Baha'is are engaged in all over the world is trying to make prayer kind of the center of our community life,
Mm-hmm.
and then also engaging in social action based on that to achieve
Mm-hmm.
justice. And my experience with the No Dapple camps that were on Standing Rock is that's exactly what those were.
Yeah.
It was building a community, out on the prairie, with social action as its goal and justice, and the very center of it was constant prayer.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It's really an interesting thing. If maybe some of the participants in the webinar went out there, but if any of them did go out there, then I think it'll really stand out the extent to which people emphasize nonviolence in throughout they were like every day they had the nonviolence training, and then constantly like the different elders would go around and really remind the people of this. And one of the interesting things that surfaced, and I don't think it was ever really explained or developed by the media, but you may have heard about this on social media, is they describe this, people think of the pipeline as, or they describe it as a black snake. Did you hear this? Did you ever encounter this? The black snake. Yeah. So then I think people actually thought that the black snake referred to just the pipeline itself. But there's another element to it, and this is that it's a legend, it's a narrative. It's really an ancient narrative, and it's describes these creatures or these beings or monsters that dominated this world. And the word that there's some dialectic difference in pronunciation, but the way we say this, we say Unk'tehila. And these Unk'tehila are described as these big, huge monsters, monstrous beings. And when they move, the earth shakes. And they have scales, and they've got horns, and they've got spikes, and they've got claws, and they've got fangs, and they've got long tails, and everything like this. And what is this describing? Can you tell me? Did you figure it out?
All the construction equipment.
No, actually, it refers to dinosaurs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, and so this, so according to the this ancient narrative, as I mentioned, of the Unk'tehila, this whole world was ruled by the Unk'tehila. They ruled this world, and that is true if you study the science of paleontology. I think it was something like 230 million years in duration, this age of dinosaurs, the age of the Uktechila. So then, according to the Lakota mythology or oral tradition, the heavenly powers decreed that the earth would be cleansed of the defilement of the Uktechila. The earth would be renewed and cleansed of the Uktechila. So a heavenly force was sent down into this world to purge or cleanse, in other words, to rid the world of the Uktechila. So this occurred, and I think modern science has decided now that this was a meteorite or a meteor that hit the Earth somewhere around the vicinity of the Yucatan Peninsula. I think it was 66 million years ago. And so this caused a cataclysm that resulted in mega extinction of, I don't know, 99% of all flora and fauna at the time. And so then these Uktechila, through geological processes, they went into the earth and became fossil fuels, right? Fossil fuels. Now, to extend this legend a little bit further, is that part of this legend was that the Uktechila would resurface, and they would strive to reassert dominance in the world, to control the world. In other words, there would be a recrudescence of the age of the Uktechila. And this word recrudescence is a beautiful word because it has the little part in there, crude, Crude. So, in other words, when you think, now this is the legend, I just told it now, but when you think of it, it's not to be interpreted literally. In other words, like the Uktechila, the dinosaurs, are not going to physically come back to dominate the world. But when you think about it, the world is completely controlled by the Uktechila, by the fossil fuel industry. Do you think about this? So this fossil fuel industry has turbocharged human baser aspects of the human nature, such as greed, avarice, and all these other things associated with materialism. So this is the monstrosity that controls the world. It's called the forces of materialism. And now, to get back to our emphasis on nonviolence, you cannot fight materialism with violence. The only way, according to the legend, the only way that the Uktechila were subdued in the past and can be subdued in this, this fulfillment of this prophetic tradition is through heavenly forces. Heavenly forces alone can subdue the Uktechila. So this is what we have to do today. So this whole thing, in one sense, it's like just spurs people or reminds people that we have to shun the materialistic tendencies and focus on these heavenly powers, heavenly forces. It's the power of unity and all of these things that are the only tools that we can apply to counteract the monstrosity of materialism. Now, does that make sense, the way I explained that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was wondering, so the process of decolonization, and that was Gilakota?
Yeah, ki Lakota means to go back to be a Lakota. Now, when you think of it, all these famous people, historical people, such, you could just name any one of them, but famously, like for the Lakota people, like Crazy Horse or Sitting Bull, or you could go like with Geronimo or Chief Joseph or any of them. See, what they're noted for is that these people stood in the way of civilization. They blocked progress. They were the opponents of manifest destiny, and so this is how they are stigmatized in U.S. history and so forth. And so this is what all the Westerns are based on. That's what the whole plot of Dances with Wolves and everything is based upon this. That these people they were savages. Their whole their plight was pitiful, in that it was hopeless, and there is no basis and there's no future. And this is what's in the mind of the people throughout the world. But that's all wrong, because in fact, what Sitting Bull, they here's a quote. when when Sitting Bull is asked to become civilized, to become acculturated, he said Wambliki kanri hechaktishni. Did you get that? He said it's not necessary.
I got eagle.
Yeah, he said it's not necessary for an eagle to become a crow. Okay, so in other words, he's not saying anything bad about crows, but he's just describing, the nature of the crow is to be down here on the earth and to kind of like fight over roadkill and make a big racket, while they're doing it. Whereas the nature of the eagle is to soar way up in the heavens. So what he's saying is that that we don't have to compromise our reality. So this is what these people were striving to uphold. So they're not opposed to civilization. What they're opposed to is material civilization. What they're advocates and proponents of is divine civilization. So this is what they say when they say "Ki Lakota." See, to go back to be a Lakota is to go back to being civilized. You see, that's really what that word means, is to be civilized. So these are, according to the Lakota way of speaking, like the linguistic foundation, everything else, that is, to be a Lakota is to be civilized, and is to hold to the covenant. Now, as a Baha'i, of course, I think of it, I interpret it this way, and this is really quite heretical. So I might get burned at the stake tomorrow. I don't know, but here's my heretical thinking, and that is that Baha'u'llah in Gleanings describes that mankind is privileged. No, I'm doing a paraphrasing of this. That mankind today is privileged to hear what Moses heard through the burning bush. In other words, the voice that Baha'u'llah brought into this world is that direct voice of God that spoke on this earth for over 40 years. And also, he is the supreme manifestation of God. The supreme manifestation of God. In other words, in one sense, the one who authorized all of the proponents or exponents of the prophetic cycle. In other words, authorizing Jesus to appear in the station of the sun, and so forth. So in one sense, we can say that Baha'u'llah is that, or was that, divine personage that sent the messengers of the prophetic cycle. And so this is why when Lakota people pray, when we pray in our own language, we always pray to Tunkashila. That's what I'm saying. Who was Tunkashila, the one that authorized this woman to appear, the one that promised to appear again in the future? And so this is what I'm saying, is that that's Baha'u'llah. That's the one that authorized this woman to appear, who named the people Lakota, the advocates or the proponents of civilization. So I think that, I don't know if I'm speaking too indirectly here, but I'm just saying that this is what the this is the basis of this word Lakota.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of because I was at the Standing Rock camps for a couple days, and
Yeah.
I was there when everything happened on the bridge. With the
Oh yeah.
flash grenades and the water cannon. I wasn't on the bridge, but I was with Kamimila, and we could hear it. And then later the next
Yeah.
morning, I heard some guys talking about the police and just really, talking bad about the police. And then an elder from Standing Rock came over and he said, we should pray for those police. And it got real quiet.
Yeah.
And he said, because we've been hearing that, some of them are quitting, some of them are having PTSD, they're having, panic attacks and anxiety. And he said, they're our family, they're our brothers, and we have to pray for them. And I think that really shifted everything for
Yeah.
other people. It was a really, it just made me think that when you said about the eagles don't need to become crows.
That's right. Yeah. So that's always the imperative, is to summon ourselves to that higher consciousness. And I think that's what that's the basis of that movement, is to really empower the young people. And the only thing that really detracts from the power of that movement is, the diversion of politics and all these other distractions.
Mm.
So yeah. So that's something we have to constantly be on guard about and vigilant about, and try to bolster ourselves to resist that.
Mm.
Yeah. So we all face that. Every one of us, we face that.
Yeah.
But we have this great opportunity in a couple of weeks to counteract that through the law of fasting. That's coming up very, very fast now too.
Mm.
Yeah. Wait, I gotta.
What do you think about how the Baha'i New Year and the Lakota New Year are so close together? That's always kind of been interesting to me.
Yeah, well, it's I'm just gonna plug my phone in here. Yeah, because the it just so happens that they celebrate the New Year with the return of the thunders. So that
Mm.
always, because of the latitude, I think Chicago is kind of at that latitude also. Uh, that's usually in March. At some point in March, maybe mid to later March, when the thunders come back, and that's the inauguration of the season of fasting, because the thunders in the northern hemisphere at this latitude, they are the harbinger, the signal of summoning everything back into the state of life. Ending the dormant, the hibernation, that stage, and summoning everything back into life. And so that's celebrated, by the enactment, or the inauguration of the law of fasting comes into effect. But to think about the big difference, of course, and now law of fasting is really found in some form or another throughout most of mankind, has something analogous to that. But here in North America, throughout time, because the life of the subsistence life of people is very difficult, the law of fasting as it's practiced is really an ordeal. So then the people will go out fasting in the wilderness for maybe 4 days, 4 nights, no food and no water. But the part that's interesting, people don't realize, is that hunger only occurs in the first 24 hours of fasting, because after, hunger is just a condition of the digestive system sending signals at regular intervals to the brain that food needs to be coming down. And so then after 24 hours, you deprogram that. So you don't experience hunger, but the thirst is really intense. And then, like being out in a wilderness area alone, then the whole social infrastructure disappears. It all dissipates. And then so you just have this feeling of being just you and God, and that's it. So it's really, really, really super intense.
Mm.
But I think the Baha'i fast is really cool because every day you get hunger. It's a beautiful feeling, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's really cool. So every day about maybe 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the evening, you get that really good intense feeling, and the only way you can kind of ameliorate it or to satiate that is through prayer. So there's no other way
Mm.
that you can counteract that. And the beautiful thing about the Baha'i fast is that this law of fasting, which is kind of has become largely ignored or inoperative in the other world religions. So Baha'u'llah renewed that law and made it accessible to everybody. And it's very lenient too, so that people who are traveling, people who are sick, people. So there's so many exemptions, and so it's really, really, really such a beautiful, powerful thing. In fact, before I was a Baha'i, that was the thing I loved most about the Baha'i faith. And I think like for 1 or 2 years before I was a Baha'i, I really enjoyed participating in the fast.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, a couple years ago, I got to go to the the thunder ceremony, and then up at the top, there was this guy from Cheyenne River. He was talking to a couple guys, and he was talking about how in the Lakota view, the way we prepare for the new year is by, because we went through this long hike up Black
Yeah.
Elk Peak, and he was talking about how we give of what the only thing we really have is our bodies and even the water. And he said, so it's a hard year, it's a hard hike. You give of tears and sweat, and that kind of prepares you. And it feels like similar to Baha'i fasting is we kind of give of what we the only our own bodies. And
You faded out right at the end. Can you say that again?
and it seemed like that Lakota belief was analogous to the kind of the Baha'i preparation for the new year is by we give the only thing we really own is our own bodies. The only
Yeah,
thing we control is, so we give of
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's a beautiful hike. I think it's 4 or 5 miles. It's pretty steep too.
Yeah.
To the top of. They call that. It was renamed Black Elk Peak, but then that is not the traditional name. They call that Hihankakapaha. Hihankakapaha means the Owl Maker Hill. That's the on the the big the Milky Way. We call that Wanahi Chanku, the Spirit Road, and straight up, if you can see it in a place with no light pollution, you look up there, you can see where there's a fork in the road, and one fork goes straight, the other fork just kind of tapers off to nothing, and in that right in that fork right there where it forks, there's a bright star there, a bright star. And that bright star, that's what they call Hihankacha, owl maker. So the owl maker is there to guard the road, and the owl maker will, when a soul dies and traverses that road, then the Hihankacha will block the way and says, Hoya nituehe. He says, hey, who are you? Dakwinichapin, and what is your name? What is your name? So then that soul has to give its name. And so then when that soul received the name initially, then that whoever gives that name, they announce that name out to all of creation, that all of creation acknowledge this new inductee into the hoop of life. And so then all of creation bears witness to the reality, your spiritual reality. And so that is attached to your name. So then when you give that name to Hihankacha, so your reality, your spiritual reality manifests itself. And that's what Hihankacha sees. So based on that, the Hihankacha can either step aside and allow you to progress throughout eternity on that straight road, or block that road, in which case you have to go on this other trail that tapers off to nothing. So none of us knows our fate. None of us knows our fate. And so then when a soul passes on, what they'll do is that the family will symbolically keep that soul and then perform heavenly deeds in the name of that departed loved one. So the idea is that when they do these deeds in the name of that departed loved one, then they can push that soul back up on that straight road. And so now, this whole idea of making that pilgrimage to the top of Hiancaja, which is the highest point between the Rockies and the Alps, and so the whole point of doing that is that you pray, you carry that prayer for your departed loved one to the top. And so that whole sacrifice is walking up there, carrying your prayers up there. And that's the time when all of creation is awakening because the thunders came back. And so then all of creation can bear witness to these good deeds that you performed on behalf of that departed loved one that's going to push that soul back up, see, on that road. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it's just something that people have been doing throughout time. And then in recent years, they decided to revive that. And so I went up there last March, almost a year ago. And gosh, I think there was like 700 people that went up there. It was really cool. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, you have to trudge through the snow and everything, but it was really good. A lot of young people up there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's great.
So I just kind of one last question before then if you have time, we could open it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But so the US NSA in a recent letter called for people to go, to areas that have a lot of Native folks, Native populations. So I was wondering, what would you say to someone that is thinking about going to one of those areas? Like, how could they prepare, or what should they know?
I think that there's really an effective strategy that people could do, and that is a lot of young people. They're thinking about going to college, and I think especially a lot of young people now, they are really well trained in the institute process, so they are equipped to really do these basic core activities in communities. And as I think a lot of the people know, that this is in the tablets of divine plan. Abdul Baha says you must attach great importance to these Indians. These Indians, uh, when properly guided, how does that go? When properly guided, gosh, I always know that quote at the tip of my tongue, but now it slipped my mind.
I got it right here.
Shall become so enlightened that the whole world shall be illumined.
Yeah.
And so then, but this is kind of like a very difficult prophecy to fulfill because the U.S. Baha'i community is like 99.99% urban, and the indigenous population here in North America is the only non-urban population left. At one time, all the different immigrant populations were rural based, but now none of them are. Only the indigenous population. So it's just like it's impossible for that prophecy to become fulfilled because the Baha'i population is urban and the indigenous population is largely rural. But I think the ones that are poised and especially poised to be able to overcome that gap would be young people. And one of the strategies I think is still a good strategy, and we did that to good effect in recent years, and that is all of the different colleges do have, or most of them all have these tribal, the reservations have tribal colleges. And so these tribal colleges are, it's the perfect venue, I think, because let's say hypothetically there's a young Baha'i who has the training and they want to maybe start children's classes or support devotional meetings and so on and so forth. Then if they go as even a part-time student, they will have an uncontrived entree into that community. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let's say you go as a pioneer, well then you're just there. You maybe could stand out like a sore thumb. But if you're a student, then it's an uncontrived place in that community. So then you have your colleagues, you've got your fellow students, your peer group, and you've got I think it's a natural fit, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm just bringing that up because as an idea for people to consider. Now, I'm not saying only youth should go or so on and so forth, but no, but that's a key element. I was I had this dream recently. I was talking to one of my friends, and so we were just kind of like they say, "Ikche won't keep you like up." We were just chit chatting back and forth, small talk, and then all of a sudden, this young guy came in. This is my dream, and maybe 15 years old, and so then I told my buddy, says, "Kushkala ke kile lila ungana helaka hihuni." So late to eso. I said, "This guy that just appeared all of a sudden, who is this guy right here?" And then my friend says, "Lea kushkala ka kile lea takujah bakuwaji." This is one of my grandsons, he said. And then so we were just talking. And I said, "Well, that's really good." I said, "So what? Then what is his name? Your grandson?" Then he says, "Le takoja at kuku hunku kilila trogiela chashki trompi nali chaje kililo shteshte nalila trokcha." He said, "This young guy here, his parents gave him a kind of unusual name. It's really different name." Well, I said, "Well, what is the name?" I said, "Well," he says, "Koshkala kekile Mumtaz Echiap." He says, "This young guy, his name is," he said, "Mumtaz." And so then this is stuck in my dream. And so then I, I remembered that. And I said, "What in the world could that be?" So then I called my wife and I told that to her. My wife is from Turkey. She only spoke Turkish until she was over 20. Then she learned English when she came to the U.S. And so then, so almost the majority of her life, she only spoke, well, she's 48. But anyway, quite a long period of her life, she was monolingual in Turkish. But then she said, "Well, this Mumtaz," she said, "We do have that word, but it's not a Turkish word. It's a loan word from Arabic." She says, "Well," I said, "Well, that's good. That's cool. What does it mean to you?" She said, "Well, Mumtaz means," she said, it means somebody who's distinguished, someone who's outstanding, someone who excels." I said, "Well, that's really interesting." So that's my wife. So then in the context of this dream, how would you interpret that? Well, she says, "My dear," she says, "I hate to break the news to you, but what this dream means is that you guys are washed up." She says, "It's over for you." I said, "Really? What do you mean?" She said, "You guys, your generation, you had your day in the sun. You had your chance," she says. "Now you just have to get out of the way and let these young people arise. It's their day. It's their time. God has put that. You look at all the problems you guys made, your generation. Now look, these young people, Baha'u'llah has endowed them with special capacities, attuned specifically for this time now. These gifts needs to be released into the world to alleviate the suffering of mankind now. You guys just get out of the way, let them do their part." "It's over for you," she said. "Oh, geez, give me a break." I said.
You got still
Yeah.
got some miles left, I'd say.
Yeah, I got a few miles left. That's what I like to think. Yeah.
So, are you okay if we open it up to some questions from the audience?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so folks, if you have some questions, you could actually the best way is if you do in the Q&A button. I guess people are typing.
Okay. No, she was just being facetious. I think really, no matter who we are, what age, we all have something vital to do, vital to contribute.
Mm.
We all have this place in the hoop of life. It's just by definition, there's no corners, there's no place to hide. There's no dark place there. It's all front row seats,
Mm.
no second row. So we all have that.
Mm.
But she's just making the point that, you know, this dream focuses on these young people.
Yeah. Someone asks, how do we find the native population in cities?
Oh yeah, they're during the 1950s there was this big federal program called the relocation. So the lot of money was appropriated to relocate people to urban areas, and there's several urban areas that were the target. And so up in this area, the main places where you can find large urban populations would be, of course, Chicago, which has the the oldest Indian center in the U.S. They're down, I forget the address. It's in Chicago. So there's a large population, but they're really spread out everywhere, all over the metroplex. And of course, and then Milwaukee, there's a pretty large community. Then, of course, Minneapolis as well. But one of the interesting things is you'll find that you can find people like in Chicago or Minneapolis, and maybe they're like third or fourth generation living there, and then you ask them, where are you from? And then they'll never say Chicago. They always say, "Oh, my family's from Kashina, or they're from Lac du Flambeau, or they're from Black River Falls, or something like that." They always say that. So no matter what, it's like they're connected through the umbilical cord to that tribal homeland. Yeah. But still, they're because of economic opportunities and so forth, they're based there. Like here in South Dakota, I'm right now at a friend's house in Rapid City. So Rapid City is like, I think it's almost like 20% tribal population in Rapid City. So here in Western South Dakota, if you took, even though there's a huge urban native population, if you took Rapid City out of the population mix, it would be almost majority Indigenous in Western South Dakota.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, they always say our language is dying out, but there's still a lot of speakers around, especially
Mm.
people my age. We have a lot of speakers.
Mm. Are there more young folks learning the language?
Yeah, there's really a lot of young people that are learning, and so it's really an amazing movement. So it's growing. It's still in its embryonic stage, but it's gaining momentum. It's really a wonderful, powerful movement. To me, it just shows it's all part of this awakening process.
Mm.
People, yeah, coming out of their hibernation, their deep hibernation.
Mm.
Yeah.
Someone asks, is there a Native Friendship Center in Rapid City?
There's quite a few. They have different organizations here. Like they've got quite a few youth organizations here. There's the Ateapi program. There's a lot of social services programs here in Rapid City. There's quite a few, and there's really, like, if people did want, they do have an LSA here in Rapid. I don't live in Rapid City, but anyway, I'm just here for a couple till tomorrow. Then I'm heading back. But uh, there's there is an LSA, and I think they'd be very supportive of any kind of systematic work that could be done with core activity, especially with the young people. And there already is some going on, but I think it could be really bolstered quite effectively.
Hmm.
Yeah, this weekend, starting on Friday, there's going to be a big uh, um, uh, uh, children's class and youth animator uh, focused gathering in Bismarck over the weekend.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's a big thing coming up. A lot of people from around the region are going there.
Oh, that's great.
Hmm.
So we got a question. Can you distinguish for us the difference between social justice movements like the No DAPL action and the politics which we are enjoined to resist? I think that many Baha'is are doing nothing because they fear they might get sucked into politics.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point, huh? About the to differentiate these two. Yeah, it is really tough because I think people are naturally sucked into this political stuff. But no matter what, like I really enjoyed going up there. You know, my little home place is there in Wakapala, so then the No Dapple camp is up closer to Cannonball, which is a few miles away. But I really enjoy going over there when it was going on because uh, it's so easy to, a lot of people are really, really preoccupied with politics, but then it was so easy, like just to pull everybody back into that prayerful focus. And so I think people they're all aware of that foundation of the need to really maintain that prayerful focus. And that's the thing that we can just accentuate and develop that. And, that would be the effective remedy to, and that's in that thing, that's that section 3 in book 2 of the Ruhi books, is how do you infuse conversations with spirit? And so as Baha'is, we have so much ammunition in our arsenal to do that. You know, any topic, whether it's economics or there's that prosperity, humankind, all of these topics we can infuse them with spirit, and we can derail, the often the tendency for to people to go into like political agendas and things like that. So it's a great practice we can we can we can engage in. Is that did I sidestep that question effectively there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's another question about it's related is how would you like how would you respond to comments by some Baha'is who see participating in the No Dapple movement as partisan or subversive of government?
Oh, well, I suppose you could say that, but I think uh, all you have to do is just maintain your own focus. That's all. You know, maintain your own focus. Uh, it has to do with well, it's controversial. It's really controversial because the in one sense, I mean, in the legal sense, the the tribe, let's say any of the tribes, let's say the Standing Rock Sioux tribe has more inherent sovereignty than the state. So, it's like splitting hairs. And so then it was Morton County that was the main instigator of all this movement. So that the Morton County, I don't know, it just it gets bogged down in politics, but it's like hair splitting. But I think as long as you stay focused on the spiritual principles involved, then you can kind of you stay aloof from this more divisive thing down here. So that's what I would do. I didn't even think about all this political stuff. I just like to go over there and say prayers with people. That's all.
Mm.
Perfect place to do that. I just loved it. Yeah. Yeah. Forget politics. Just go there and pray. That's it. Yeah.
So I'm going to try to say this right. I think it's a Navajo. It's from Siwa. She says,
That's you.
Yata Uncle Kev.
Yate, hatich banana.
She says, what is your favorite message or book that you're currently studying as inspiration for Baha'i work?
My current book that I'm studying is inspiration for Baha'i work.
Yeah.
I think that that 5-year plan is the best. I don't have it in here. It's out in my car, but it's a compilation. It's the compilation of the messages having to do with the 5-year plan,
Mm.
because right at the current moment we're right in between these two significant milestone years of you know the bicentenary of the twin births of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. So we're right in the hiatus between them. So it's really it's a powerful, very propitious moment. And of course, we're coming up to the the a centenary of the inauguration of the well, the the closing of the heroic age, with the passing of Abdul Baha. So it's really an amazing time, and so this is what I think we're the guidance that we can look at, and then of course through our institutions we can really ourselves with these powerful forces of integration that will counteract, because we always see you look on that, sometimes I'll look on that my phone app and it's got the news on there, and that's all you see on there is all this corruption, all this abuse, and all this perversion, and all this stuff. It's a catalog of horrors that we see, so then we can easily get diverted into that, and I think that's what people are. They feel like, I don't know, just feel like numbed out by it, and so then we get that's kind of a get sucked into this forces of disintegration. But we just counteract that. Just like my niece says there, Siwa says, we have to focus on that plan. So just pick up the guidance there in the 5-year plan, and it'll infuse you with that encouragement.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
inspiration.
another question, in your experience, how do I help the elders and parents overcome this kind of stigma that comes with using terms like God and other religious language when working with the youth? The book one really strengthens their relationship with the creator. What kind of language do you find helpful?
Oh, you mean, well, on the in the I think in the tribal communities, it's really, you won't find any atheists or anybody like that. This is one of the I always think that there's the indigenous population, especially in North America. They take a world leadership role in several areas, and I think if you can just tie into those areas, you can't go wrong. Of course, one of them would be this whole idea of everything being child centered. Everything is child centered. So this is something that was really tantamount to so many of these covenants which were established by the revelators here in North America. Probably preeminent of which was the peacemaker out there in the east. The Haudenosaunee, the Six Nations, the peacemaker Deganawita. And I can't really speak authoritatively, but this is something which is very prominent there in the teachings, is that all of the deliberations and consultations that take place have to take account not only those that are currently living, but even up to 7 generations in the future. They have to consult and deliberate as to how their actions will affect 7 generations. They call that the unborn. But this is something that's really common throughout North America. The spiritual heritage of this land is very much child centered, centered around the consideration of the unborn. And so another important feature I think that which is really congruent and you can relate to people is the how everything that's initiated, everything that started has to be done with prayer. So it's really the point is that, like, everything uh the only way to achieve unity is through spiritual unity. There's nothing else which is lasting, has substance aside from that. So that's the second point. Third point might be that the indigenous people of North America have taken a global leadership point position on is the uh, uh, intolerance for substance abuse. Alcohol. Alcohol has no place. Like in other cultures. Like a lot of European cultures and so forth, they can't really do anything without that alcohol. It's got to be part of the lubrication system of any kind of activity that occurs. It's really so important. But here in indigenous North America, there's no room, no place for that. Even though a lot of people do have addiction to it, but they're shunned, they're ostracized, they can't participate in any traditional function as long as they're abusing substance abuse. And then maybe a fourth point that you can resonate with people everywhere in Indian country is this whole idea of this the interrelatedness of all of creation, and that goes back to that earlier point about everything in the world is a physical manifestation of a spiritual reality. Just the idea that everything is connected. So these are some really good points I think you can develop. And there again, we can we can all tie these relating current issues to spiritual principles. It's so easy to do.
Mm.
And this is a way. I don't know if that was what the question was concerning. I may have gone off on a tangent there, but anyway, that's what came to my heart and mind.
Okay. Time for one more question?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. How can the North American Indigenous community encourage other Indigenous communities to retain their original language? My husband is from East Africa, and all the children are learning English to be more competitive, but they are losing their connection to their culture and a different world perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really part and parcel of the world that we live in, which is the tendency for all these dominant cultures to swallow up and to devour the minority languages and cultures. And so that I think that's the overt manifestation of this of materialism. They always say that. So what do you call it when if a person speaks two languages? What is that called? You know that. What's the answer?
Bilingual,
How about three?
trilingual,
How about like more three and up or four and up? Yeah,
multilingual,
multi. How about one?
mono.
American. Yeah. So somehow people in the U.S. they have I don't know. It's the only place really where you find that because when I first became a Baha'i in 1980, I had a chance to go on a U.S. State Department tour to Africa. That was the first place I met Baha'i communities. Like was in Senegal, and there I learned like the average person who kind of had a below average intelligence, they would speak at least five languages, and that was like a minimum. But all over, it's not just in Africa, but all over the world. Multilingualism is just so common, and here we act like it's impossible to do here in the U.S. Yeah, but no, it's very common, and it's and so there's all these studies. Neuroscientists they research this and how much it improves. Your mental functioning, your analysis, and all these higher functions. Brain functions are improved with multilingualism. So I think rather than discouraging, it should really just encourage it. That's my view, and it's great. Yeah.
So someone asked if you'd be willing to come and visit the areas of the Six Nations in Ontario in the coming year for teaching opportunities. So
Yeah, my bags are packed. See right here, I got them all. My bags are all packed. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
And people can visit
Anytime.
kevinlocke.com, right?
Yeah, just go right there. I've got my buddy, my colleague, he really keeps that website up and it's got, a lot of promo material on there. So yeah, I'm good to go. I'm good to go. My personal trainer is my wife. She's got me, like on a really good diet. I use the Juice Plus product. She has me doing like the insanity workout every day. I'm doing that. I go out and I'll run like 3, 4, 5 miles a day. That's my personal training. Yeah.
So you're ready to go.
So yeah, I'm good to go. I'm ready to go. I'm just like chomping at the bit here. I feel like a Maserati. Going down the road at 5 miles an hour. So I got to just get it up now.
Yeah, hopefully we can get you back out in Chicago and maybe do
anytime. Yeah, anytime.
So I think we've taken enough of your time. Just gonna send. Oh boy, wait. Wanted to share the video link with everyone so that they can see the YouTube. Version of this. Okay, so I just sent everyone the YouTube link. So, okay, you see how much I remember. Wopila tanka doksha ake. Is that right?
Yeah. Imato kashne la lilo opila tanke chichi. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's no problem for me. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to visit with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's great. Thanks.
all the best to everybody. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you too.
All right.
Hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Okay. All right. Bye for now.
All right. Bye.